All right, good Saturday morning to you. Happy 2021, Mizzou fans. Welcome into the Baseline View. I am Gabe DeArmond, getting set for tip-off between Missouri and Arkansas from Fayetteville here in just about an hour. It's a nationally televised game on CBS with Bill Raftery joining Carter Blackburn on the call. We are going to lead you up to tip-off here from Bud Walton Arena. Well, they're at Bud Walton Arena. I'm in my home office in Columbia, taking shelter from the snow and ice that hit us over the last 24 hours. So today is either the day that Missouri fans take a step back off the ledge and understand it's maybe not quite as bad as the last time out, or it's the day you hit full-blown panic mode and are scared to death that the first 6 games of your team season was a complete mirage and the rest of the year and pretty much everything going forward is a complete disaster. Obviously, neither of those things necessarily is going to be true, but we are pretty much at the point in the season where we make snap judgments after every single game, and we did it on Wednesday night, and I'm sure we're going to do it again. I don't mean that as an insult. We all do it, but I think my overriding takeout from Tennessee is Missouri's not quite on par with Tennessee, not quite on par to win the league. Also, we are a nation now of football fans who applies that mentality to basketball seasons, and it's just not the same thing. In football, if you lose a game, it takes you very much out of the picture to win a national title. If you lose 2, you're pretty much done. It's just not that way in basketball. You can lose. Everybody's going to lose a game. I mean, there are teams out there who haven't. Missouri's playing one of them today. But at some point this year, almost everybody's losing a game before the tournament, and that's okay. Now, look, you don't want to lose it by 20. You don't want to lose it in the fashion Missouri did. None of that. But it happened. One of those nights, it's pretty easy to flush and move on. And Missouri has to move on because Missouri has a test in front of it today in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Arkansas this year is 9-0. Haven't really played much. The non-conference schedule was very unimpressive. The highest-ranked team they faced in the non-conference was North Texas. And by ranked, I'm going by KenPom rankings here, not national rankings, because there was no national ranking in front of anybody Arkansas faced. So they beat North Texas 69-54. Not super impressive. But Arkansas did come out in the SEC opener and beat Auburn 97-85. And Auburn's not a bad team. Arkansas has some dudes now. I mean, they got some guys out there. And hey, I should have done this earlier, but do want to invite you, please, comments and questions. We'll take all your guys' thoughts throughout the show. We'll put them up on the screen. We're going to have an interview with Andrew Hutch, who covers the Razorbacks for hogbeat.com. We're going to check in with Mitchell Forty here leading up to tip-off. He's not in Fayetteville. He's in Columbia, but we'll kind of talk to him and bat some things around with him. But we want to get your guys' thoughts, your guys' questions, your guys' opinions on where Missouri's at, all that. So put that in the chat. We'll make sure to put them up on the screen and highlight what you guys want to talk about, because that's always better than just me talking about what I want to talk about. But like I was saying, Arkansas's got some guys. I mean, you watch that team play. That's a fun, athletic team to watch play. I mean, they only scored 72 against Texas Arlington and 69 against North Texas. But other than that, here are their point totals for the year. 142, 86, 79, 100, 87, 85, 97. This is a team that is more than capable of putting up points. Missouri has done that at times this year, but has struggled in its last couple games to make shots. On the season, Arkansas is averaging 90.8 points per game. It's 8th in the country. Now, just in case you think, hey, this is a one-trick pony, Arkansas is also only given up 64 points a game. Missouri's given up 66. So Arkansas is 19 points a game better than Missouri offensively and 2 points a game better than Missouri defensively. Again, Arkansas has not played Missouri's schedule. It's not super challenging, but the numbers are impressive. And look, I watched that first half against Auburn on Wednesday night before we did our pregame show for the Mizzou-Tennessee game. this team has guys. This is a good basketball team. It's athletic. It's long. It can cause Missouri some problems, especially if Missouri plays anything like it's played the last two games. Missouri in the last two games is shooting under 30% from the field. Shockingly, they actually won one of those games when they shot 25%. But under 30% from the field, 6 for, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I think it's like 6 for 37 from three-point range. They're shooting 18 for 43 on layups and dunks. I mean, we want to look for a million explanations for things. There's one very simple explanation for why Missouri is where it's been the last two games. They can't make anything. They're not making twos. They're not making threes. They're taking contested shots. They're taking quick shots. It's been a mix of everything. They're not shooting the ball well. The defense has been mostly okay. I know Tennessee scored a lot, but like Tennessee was taking tough shots in the early going, and they were making them all. I don't think the defense has been terrible. 21 turnovers against Tennessee on Wednesday night is too many, but the biggest problem is they just haven't made shots. And that is now kind of a trend for this team over the last year and a half, right? They were the worst three-point shooting team in school history last season at 29.7%. They are worse than that this year at 27.3%. Missouri has to find some guys who can make shots. And let's run through the candidates real quick. You got Mark Smith, who his track record says he's going to make a whole bunch of them in the non-conference and against bad teams. And it also says he has a lot of trouble getting open and getting a shot off against good teams and athletic teams. Well, Missouri's going to face a lot of athletic teams in the SEC. They face one today. Mark Smith had 15 against Oregon. If he could do that today, you'd be encouraged. He took 2 shots against Tennessee, and neither one of them was a 3. He was a complete non-factor in that game. Missouri isn't going to very often win when Mark Smith is a complete non-factor. You got Drew Smith. He does a lot of things well. He's a decent outside shooter. He's better than he's shown this year, I think. But he's better than he's shown. He was better at Evansville than he's been at Missouri. So maybe there's some Mark Smith in him, right? Maybe he doesn't have the ability to get that shot off against some of the more athletic teams because he's not been a great three-point shooter at Missouri. You got Xavier Pinson. People think that this is a guy that shoots the ball well from three-point range. He's 8 for 33 this year. He's taking 5 threes a game, and he ain't making any. So I'm not sure that he's a guy you want shooting the ball more. I don't really know who that leaves that you do want shooting the ball more, honestly. But, I don't think Missouri's recipe to success is suddenly going to be running into making 13 threes in this game. They're going to have to get in the lane. They're going to have to get to the foul line. And I want to welcome in Cam Cameron real quick. He is our first commenter, and we do certainly welcome all your guys' comments. We will put them on the screen here just as we are doing with Cam. I'm trying to find a way to reshape this. There you go. Now we reshaped it, and we can fit it on the screen a little bit better without covering my face. Cam says, is this what they expected from Drew Buggs or a letdown? With the hype he got this offseason, I was expecting a guy who could shoot at a decent clip and facilitate, and haven't really seen that so far. I think it's a fair point with Buggs. Look, they love it. Konzo just goes on and on about the guy. I think he's made 1 shot this year. I mean, I've not seen it yet. And while we're doing this, I'm going to look up Drew Buggs' stats at Hawaii last year. I'm sure they're, significantly better than they are so far at Missouri. And look, you understand that, right? It's a jump in the level of competition. He's getting used to a new team. He didn't really have an offseason, so you could probably expect some drop-off there. But the way Konzo and the players talk about this guy after games, sometimes you think he's out there just doing a ton for him, and he really hasn't so far. So the Drew Buggs in 2019 at Hawaii played 34.8 minutes a game. He averaged 9.4 points, 4.5 rebounds, 5.4 assists, 0.9 steals, 2.7 turnovers. He shot 36% from the floor, 26 from three, and 72 from the line. So he's not a great shooter, right? That kind of shows up. 36% from the field and 26% from three is not great for a point guard. You'd like to see better. But he did average 4.5 rebounds and 5.4 assists. So now let me go and find Drew Buggs' stats for Missouri this year. And I'm going to be honest, there isn't a whole lot to find. Drew Buggs in 14 minutes a game, so he's playing 40% the minutes. He has 0.6 points per game. He basically has scored 4 points in 7 games. 1.1 rebounds. So if you multiply that by 2.5, that's about 2.7 rebounds, which is 2 below what he had last year. 1.7 assists. Multiply that by 2.5, you're looking at 4 assists. He averaged 5.4 at Hawaii last year. He's shooting 13.3% from the floor. He hasn't made a free throw, and he hasn't made a three. So, no, they're not getting what they need out of him. Now, I don't think Drew Buggs is like in the top 5 of problems on this team, really. I think there are much bigger problems, but they're not getting what they do from Drew. Welcome in, Bo. Big game, have to find a rhythm again. Thought Wednesday looked like last year. It's a big game for Missouri to at least show, and I think we all realize this, they're not as bad as they looked on Wednesday. Now, they may not be as good as they looked in the first 6 games of the season, but they're not as bad as they looked on Wednesday. I said at the beginning of this week, I think I said it on the pregame show on Wednesday night, I'm not going to be shocked if Missouri ends up 0-2 this week, and if they do, don't panic. Well, I'm going to rephrase that a little bit. They get blown off the floor by Tennessee, and then they go get blown off the floor by Arkansas. You panic a little bit because what that tells you is that this team isn't even in the neighborhood of the best teams in the league. And we thought they were in the neighborhood. Again, I didn't pick them to win the league even after the 6-0 start, but I said I could see it. I mean, they should be a top 4 team. And I said with Tennessee, Arkansas, and either Florida or, maybe Ole Miss or LSU. If this game's over in the first half and they're just kind of fighting to stay within 15 the way they were most of the night against Tennessee, then you're going to reassess that and say, it looks like they've got 4 sure losses on the schedule, and I'm not sure this is a top 4 team. All right? Now, this is a tough game at Fayetteville, following home against Tennessee. That's a hard way to start the SEC. But this team and this staff has been insistent for 2 years. We've got the guys to win this league. We've got enough talent. All we have to do is stay healthy. The constant defenders will use the health as kind of a get-out-of-jail-free card for the last 2 years. I won't use it as a get-out-of-jail-free card. I will admit it's a factor. But it's not this year. They're healthy. They have all their guys. This is the roster he wanted and he put together. And if you go out and look bad again today, then, yeah, you start to wonder, this is what we were pointing to in year 4 is a team that finishes 5th or 6th in the SEC and gets like a 7 or 8 seed. Is that the ceiling, and is that good enough? Now, we're not there yet. They could go out and win this game, and we could be having a completely different conversation 3 hours from now on the postgame show. But, that's where we're at going into this game. Adam Schlittler, welcome to Schlittler. Sorry, want to make sure I pronounce that right. Welcome to the show. Pickett didn't play much last game. Do you think Watson could take some of his minutes to possibly add more of a shooting threat on the floor? I think it's possible. Konzo has said he needs to find a way to get Torrance Watson into games more. Now, I don't know. It's not like Torrance has proven to be a great shooter in his first 2 years. He has had stretches where he looked pretty good. Right now he's shooting 42% from three-point range, but I think that's 3 of 7 on the season, so that's not really a sample size. Let's go back to last year. Watson shot 28% from 3 for the season, and then as a freshman he shot 36. So, For his career, he's around 32%. It's pretty good on this team. It's pretty average overall. But Watson in high school wasn't necessarily known as this spot-up sharpshooter. He was a guy that got in the lane and scored in a million. He was a scorer, but I don't know that he was a shooter. The reason Pickett didn't play much last game, in 9 minutes he had 4 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 fouls. That's a big reason he didn't play. I mean, Javon Pickett, he's a barometer player for this team. When he is playing well, this team can look pretty good. When he's not playing well, this team tends to not be as good. And now that's kind of odd because he's not one of their top 4 or 5 players, but the way he plays is kind of a good indicator for how the team is playing. And look, Konzo loves Javon Pickett. I think he sees some of himself in him. The guy absolutely works as hard and gets as much out of what he's got as anybody on this roster. And I think that's going to always go a long way with Konzo. So does Watson take minutes from him? I don't know. If you've got a couple more games like Wednesday night, then yeah, you have to look at changing up the rotation. But I think right now, Missouri right now basically has an 8-man rotation. I mean, they've started the same group every single game. And that is Pinson, Mark Smith, Drew Smith, Tillman, and Kobe Brown. Those 5 guys are going to start. Javon Pickett, Mitchell Smith, and Drew Buggs are going to be the first 3 guys off the bench. Parker Brown is going to play like a little bit. And if he plays the way he played on Wednesday, honestly, he's going to play a little bit less in most games going forward. I mean, he couldn't stay in front of anybody on Tennessee. He took a terrible 3. And look, I'm not blaming Parker Brown for the game, but it wasn't a great night for him. When you're the 9th man in limited opportunities, if that's what you're doing with those minutes, then those minutes might go down or might go away. CBW0, welcome to the show, says, my impression is that we have one of the older teams in the SEC. We were playing 21 to 23-year-olds facing teams who are playing primarily 18 to 21-year-olds. If so, should we be concerned? Well, it's not just your impression, it's fact. Missouri has the most experienced roster in the SEC this year. They brought back something like 89% of their scoring and rebounding from last year. I mean, Missouri touted it throughout the preseason that they had the most experienced roster in the SEC. So, and I think early on that helped Missouri, right? In this season where nobody was getting practice time and nobody had a regular offseason, Missouri didn't either, but Missouri didn't need it as much because they didn't have, they had guys that had played together. So I'm looking, Ken Pom on experience. Missouri averages 2.49 years of experience. They are the 9th most experienced team in the country. So, yes, they have more experience. They are a more veteran team than virtually everyone they will play this year. Maybe everyone. I don't know. I haven't looked up who the top 8 teams in the country are, and I'm not sure if that's a thing that I'm able to do. But yes, Missouri has a ton of experience. And again, we talked about this a lot on the postgame show Wednesday night. It's part of why everybody's so down right now is because most of that experience is probably going to leave next year and everybody's going, oh no, what do we have left? And so you're looking at it, hey, this is the year that they were pointing to. This is kind of the year to take advantage of things. This is the ceiling. And if the ceiling was going to be a 3 seed and finish second in the SEC and go, 20-5 or something, hey, that's pretty good. But if all of a sudden the ceiling's going to be, 11-7 in the SEC and you're going to be like a 7 seed, then maybe that's not quite as good for the peak of Konzo's first 5 seasons. So, I think we covered a lot of that. But no, you're right, CBW, 100%. They have a very experienced team. They have a veteran team, and this is a year they need to make hay. And I'm not going to say it has to start today. It's not a must-win game. Arkansas is good. I don't think Missouri fans are giving Arkansas enough credit for how good they are. But every game on this show, on the pregame portion, what we do is try to talk to somebody who covers the opposing team and give you guys a little bit more insight into the way Arkansas is going to go about things. So we did that today and we actually did that earlier in the week. Going to play it for you today. Got about a 10-minute interview here. Then we'll come back and take some more comments and questions and talk Mizzou, Arkansas. All right, talking with Andrew Hutchinson. Hey, we just did this a couple weeks ago for football, but now it's basketball season. Andrew covers the Razorbacks for hogbeat.com. And first off, Justin Smith, like that's the news of the week. Eric Musselman said maybe he'll play, maybe he won't. One of 5 Razorbacks in double figures. What do you guys know on that for Saturday's game?
Yeah, so he went down with an ankle injury in Arkansas's SEC opener against Auburn. It happened around the 7-minute mark of the first half. He was able to come in and play the last 2.5 minutes of the first half, but then he spent the rest of the second half, in a boot on the bench. It it wouldn't surprise me if they take it easy on him. If he does play, I would expect it to be limited. Obviously, that could change, but I would expect him to be limited, which is obviously a big blow to Arkansas. I mean, he's
Yep.
in double figure scoring, you mentioned, but he's also a really good rebounder. I mean, he's freaky athletic. People probably remember watching him at Indiana. I think he has like a 40-inch vertical or something. One of Arkansas's best offensive rebounders. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they go about filling those minutes if he's not able to go.
So this Arkansas team, I went and I did an SEC preview before whatever Tuesday and Wednesday's round of games, and I just went through and I decided, well, I'm not doing predictions because I know nothing about most of these teams because most of them have played nobody, and Arkansas certainly was one of them. That the record looked good, but they hadn't played anybody, and then they came out and they looked like every bit like an 8-0 team in the SEC opener against Auburn. So is the belief in Fayetteville that, hey, this is one of those kind of top 3-4 teams in this league?
Yeah, there's a lot of optimism here in Arkansas that this is a really good team. There was a lot of optimism going into the season,
Mm.
but as you mentioned, the non-conference schedule did not exactly give a lot of really telling points. I mean, Mississippi Valley and Southern out of the SWAC. I mean, you can't learn anything from an 80-point win.
Right.
So yeah, I think people are excited. There's a lot of pieces on this team. I mean, they added several key graduate transfers. We talked about Justin Smith. Jalen Tate's been very good as a graduate transfer. You've got a superstar freshman in Moses Moody who leads the team in scoring. That is just a phenomenal freshman who might be Arkansas's first one and done, depending on how he does the rest of the season. So I think there's a lot of optimism, and in seeing what they did against Auburn, I think kind of got maybe some national attention, saying, "Hey, maybe this team is a legitimate undefeated team that could maybe contend for one of those top 4 spots in the SEC."
Yeah, I mean, they've scored 100 twice, and I understand Central Arkansas isn't great. I understand Mississippi Valley State is probably awful, but 142 points is like Loyola Marymount stuff. They put up 97 against Auburn. So, I mean, to beat them, is it possible to hold them in the 60s or 70s, or to beat Arkansas, do you have to go out and put up 80 points?
Yeah, that's a good question because I mean we're not really sure. I mean Arkansas did have a game earlier in the year, I believe against maybe North Texas or something, second game of the year where they didn't score a ton. They can be a good defensive team, but Arkansas really just kind of does whatever. I mean they go at whatever pace. They like to get up and down the floor. They like to score, but also Eric Musselman's really big on half court defense. They led the country in 3-point defense last year. Obviously Auburn just went absolutely nuts from beyond the arc and hit over 50%.
Mhm.
That was kind of an anomaly because they've been pretty good defending the 3 ball this year as well. So they really honestly can go at whatever pace they necessarily need to. They've got the athletes, they've got more depth than they did last year. When Isaiah Joe went down last year with an injury, Arkansas was pretty much screwed. I mean, they lost 5 straight games without him. This year, Justin Smith goes down, and I don't really, my personal feelings and other people's feelings is like, hey, they could sustain an injury like this because they have more depth and they can go to other people on the bench. So they can get up and down the court, but they could also, if they need to, win a grinded out game. At least I'm pretty confident they could, just because they do have enough playmakers that they could get a bucket if they absolutely need it.
Yeah, all along I've picked Arkansas and Tennessee as those 2 teams I was pretty sure would be in the top 4, and a lot of Missouri fans weren't sold, and then they came out and kind of backed that up. But if there's I mean, I know we haven't seen it yet. We haven't seen anybody beat them, so I don't know if you can answer this question, but if there's a way to beat Arkansas, if there's something somewhere they're vulnerable, what do you think it is?
Oh man, that's really a good question. I mean, I think if you just stay in the game, the entire game, we don't know how this team's going to respond in just absolutely critical, last 30 seconds tie ball game situation. They haven't had those situations. Really, Auburn was pretty competitive. I mean, it was a tie game with I think 7 minutes left, and then Arkansas went on a 10-0 run and then was able to kind of hang on from there and stretch it out at the end. But they've been good, knocking down shots from the free throw line. If Arkansas gets super cold from three, that would probably be a concern. But they've got enough guys, 1 through 5, that can go out there and shoot. I mean, Connor Vanover 7'3", but he's shooting 3-pointers and does it at a pretty high rate, even though he was, I think, 1 of 6 against Auburn. But he is a very efficient shooter. So they've just got so many weapons that if somebody's cold, somebody else is going to pick up the slack. And so, but I just don't know how they're going to respond with it being mostly a new team. I mean, Desi Sills is pretty much the only guy back from last year that contributed major minutes. Everyone else is either a freshman or a grad transfer or a transfer who sat out last year, and they haven't been in these tight late game situations before.
Yeah, I think that was the only question people had about Musselman making the jump to a major conference is he basically recruited no one out of high school at Nevada, right? It was transfers all day, every year. And people maybe had some questions whether that was going to work in the SEC. I mean, look, there can't be a happier guy in the country with this one-time transfer exception that's going to, Eric Musselman may never have to go into a high school again.
I think, it's interesting because people said that, Eric Musselman always like, well, hey, I did bring in a McDonald's All-American to Nevada. I can't remember the kid's name, but he did. But that was like one of the only few high school kids he did bring in because he did rely so heavily on transfers. But now that he's been in Arkansas, he's like, hey, this is a program that is capable of drawing high talent, freshmen. And so he is kind of going in and picking and choosing. And the ones he's brought in have been really good. I mean, the 4 he brought in this year were all Arkansas kids. They were all 4-star recruits. I mean, Moses Moody is legit, but he also wants to bring in guys that he knows kind of, they have a track record of actually playing college basketball. It's less of a gamble in his eyes to bring in transfers. And so he's struck a really nice balance so far. I would say kind of 50-50 of bringing in high school kids versus, traditional grad transfers or the regular transfers.
All right. So last thing for you, just I know every arena is a little bit different. Fayetteville hasn't maybe been the most enjoyable place for Missouri to play over the years, but what's the attendance and fan rules and everything like for Arkansas home games this year?
It's been really weird because, I mean, as probably people listening know, Arkansas Bud Walton Arena is a pretty great play, fun, exciting place to watch a game. But they've capped it, I believe, at maybe 4,200, something like that. It's very spaced out. They can get loud at times, but then again, Arkansas hasn't really played anybody that draws the max amount of loud. I mean, people aren't getting super excited about Southern. So I'm anxious to see what it maybe, I'm not actually going to be at the game on Saturday, but I'm anxious to see what the environment is like, just because it's been so hard to really get a feel for it. It's very weird. You can hear stuff on the court, just a very strange environment. It's really unfortunate because Arkansas has been so good. This team would normally, be packing out 19,000 people every game.
All right, Hutch, appreciate it, man. And we'll see what happens later on this morning down at Bud Walton. Have a good day, man.
Appreciate you having me on.
All right, so that is Andrew Hutchinson again from the rival site, or the Arkansas site on the Rivals Network. Appreciate Hutch stopping by. Tip off about 30 minutes away here. Once again, I'm Gabe DeArmond. You're watching the Baseline View. We invite you to comment, ask questions, whatever you want to do in the chat. Please, while you're here, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button to our channel. That will allow you to get notifications when we go live, which we're going to do an hour before every basketball game the rest of the year, and then immediately following Conzo Martin's press conference for our post-game show, Dance Class, which is presented by Burger Smokehouse. We take your calls and we talk about what just happened. So we also have midweek shows. Usually Wednesday nights, they have to move to Tuesdays every now and then because of basketball, but Mitchell Forty joins me on those. So you can, if you subscribe to the channel, you get notifications for all that. Anytime you're able to jump on and watch us, then You will, I assume, get a notification on your phone that we have gone live if you have the YouTube app. Also, we are putting the postgame shows in podcast form. I know, hey, a lot of people sometimes maybe can't join us. Like Wednesdays we were on the air till like almost midnight. On a Wednesday night, people might not be jumping on. Maybe Saturday afternoon, this afternoon, hey, you're going doing something with your kids, your wife, you can't watch along live. That's cool. We're going to put those in. You can watch the replay anytime at YouTube, but also we're going to put them in podcast form on Podbean and SoundCloud, and they'll pop into your iTunes feed if you subscribe to the PowerMizzou.com podcast on iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher or wherever you might do that. So with that all taken care of, we're going to take a few more. We've got some comments and some questions here. We're going to hit those before we talk to Mitchell Forty and get kind of his take on the game coming up today. So Jacob wants to know, do you place any importance on Anton Brookshire and Trevon Brazil playing in Springfield together to help ease the transition after this year? And here's the thing, and I really try to keep us as focused as possible on today's game or this year, simply because, to spend all your time worrying about next year, I mean, enjoy the season going on, but I appreciate the question. I know where this program's at. I don't know that those two guys being teammates means a lot. You've got a class next year that it's 6 3-stars, right? And on the surface, that's probably not good enough, and here's why. Because the class it's most similar to, and I can't remember the year. I want to say it was the 2007 class. Could be 6, could be 8. I can't remember exactly. Would have maybe been 2008. But that class had Keith Ramsey, Lawrence Bowers, Marcus Denman, Steve Moore, Miguel Paul, and Kim English. They were all 3-stars. None of them were highly rated guys necessarily. I mean, I think English was somewhere around 102 or something like that in the country. Didn't have a top 100 player. And obviously went on to become like the winningest class in Mizzou basketball history. Made an Elite Eight, had 2 30-win seasons, won the Big 12 tournament, all that. But the big difference between that class and this one is that class was joining a roster that already included Damari Carroll, Leo Lyons, Matt Pressey, JT Tiller, Zaire Taylor, and Matt Lawrence. I mean, those guys weren't coming in and having to start. Keith Ramsey might have started in year 1, but I don't think any of the rest of them did. Denman and English, I think, got a few starts here and there, and they played big roles at big times, but they weren't asked to do a lot. I mean, Lawrence Bowers averaged like 2 points a game as a true freshman because they weren't asked to be the stars of the program. This freshman class next year, like, they have to be good right away. Because there's not going to be a lot else unless some of these seniors and Xavier Pinson surprise us and come back. So that's the biggest difference in the two classes. And the other difference is, or not difference, but the other thing that we don't know about next year's class that we do know about that past one. Kim English was a 3-star, and he played like a 4-star. Lawrence Bowers was a 3-star, and he played like a 4-star. Keith Ramsey was a 3-star, and I think a lot of people would say he was a 3-star, but if you talk to guys on that team, and I have a lot over the years, they will tell you Keith Ramsey was one of the all-time great role players in Mizzou basketball. I mean, he did every single thing that Mike Anderson wanted him to. And then Marcus Denman was a 3-star that played like a 5-star. He was a 2-time All-Big 12 player. I mean, absolute, superstar, one of the 10 to 15 best players in the history of Missouri basketball. So he didn't play like a 3-star. So is there a kid in this class who turns into Marcus Denman? Are there 2 more that turn into Lawrence Bowers and Kim English? Hey, if so, then yeah, this can be a foundational class for Konzo. If the ratings are about right, like, that's probably not a tournament team because you need some star power, and Missouri's not going to have much. So, I don't know. It obviously remains to be seen what they'll do over the next 4 years, but I understand the optimism and I understand the questions also. Hank wants to know, why is Mizzou +9 and ranked against a non-ranked Arkansas team? Last I saw, the line was 7. But there's a few reasons. Bud Walton's a tough place to play. Arkansas hadn't been beat, looked pretty good in its SEC opener. Missouri looked pretty bad in its last game. Arkansas is athletic. I'm 7 might be a little high, but look, I wouldn't touch games. I would never bet on basketball because you can be down 3 and foul to try to make a little difference in the last minutes and lose by 8. Or you can be down 10, the other team can quit playing defense, you can get 2 layups, and you only lose by 6, and you cover. I'd never bet basketball. But one thing, though, and that line could change this morning because it is now out that Justin Smith, who averages 11.5 points and 7 rebounds per game for Arkansas, not only isn't going to play today, he's going to be out about 4 weeks after having ankle surgery. So he is out of Arkansas's starting 5. Now, Arkansas still has 4 other guys averaging in double figures and 7'3" Connor Vanover, who shoots a lot of threes and averages like 8.5 points and 7 rebounds a game. So they still got guys, but Justin Smith is not going to play today. Cam Cameron says, what percentage would you say Pinson is gone after the year, and do you think the team's success the rest of the way would impact that decision at all? We have operated under the assumption that Xavier Pinson is pretty much gone after this year, almost regardless. Now, look, we could be wrong, right? But he looked at the NBA draft last year, and if we're being honest, for 2 years has consistently, cryptically put things on social media that lead you to believe he is transferring. Now, he's never done it, and anytime you ask about it, he says, no, I never even thought about it. But when it happens once, maybe we're misinterpreting a tweet or an Instagram post. When it's happened like 5 or 6 times, there's something there. I think he's a guy that is going to want to go get paid to play basketball, whether that's in the NBA or not. I think I'd be surprised if he's back next year. Now, we've been wrong about things like this before. I said the same thing about Jeremiah Tillman going into last year, and Tillman didn't have the year he wanted, and he came back. As far as team performance, I mean, I just, because of everything Missouri is going to lose, again, unless Mark and Drew Smith and Mitchell Smith all come and say, hey, we're coming back, unless that happens too, next year's team is going to be so different. I'm not sure that factors as much into what X might decide about his personal future. And Breakfast King says, I hope Pinson enjoys Europe. And look, I don't think Xavier's probably an NBA player. I mean, not at his size. I think you almost have to be, you don't have to be Allen Iverson, but you got to be pretty special. And I'm not sure he's an NBA player. I don't think he'd get drafted. But again, like, you make good money playing basketball overseas. And, for some of these kids, that, like, they need that maybe more than you did or I did as a junior in college. And not just them, but their families and everything. So I'll never judge a kid for leaving if he decides that's what's right for him. Also, some kids, man, they just, like I said this about Phil Pressey over and over. Phil Pressey left largely because he was just tired of being a college student and having to go to class and do all that. Now, didn't turn into the NBA, but Phil's still playing basketball and still making pretty good money for doing it. So I don't know that he would look back and say, I made the wrong decision, Mark Robinson says we need X and Pickett back to help the freshmen out this year. Pickett's a junior, so he'll be back. But Pinson, we'll see. And Mark, maybe that's what you meant is that they're both juniors and you need them both to stay. That's certainly possible, But again, I could be wrong about Pinson. It's just my guess that he probably isn't going to be back next season. So tell you what we're going to do now. We're going to try to hit up Mitchell 40, and we're going to try to get somebody else to talk about this game besides just me, because I'm sure you guys love everything I have to say. But at the same time, I'm sure you'd also maybe like to hear another voice at some point in the 60 minutes leading up to tip-off, which should be about 20 minutes away from Fayetteville. And I don't know if you guys can hear the ringing in the background, but hey, now we have it appears that we have Mitchell on the line, and hey, he's also on the screen. So great success. Mitch, what's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, I'm good. Can everyone hear me and see me?
I don't know if everyone can, but I can. So,
Well,
I mean, that's just going to have to be good enough for today. So I don't know. I saw you retweeted and we just mentioned that Justin Smith is out for Arkansas. I guess that's That's a positive for Missouri. I mean, one of their, I don't know, 11.5 points, 7 rebounds a game can't hurt.
Yeah, and kind of their most experienced player too. Arkansas is a pretty young team. Now he is a grad transfer, but he's I think maybe their only upperclassman that starts. Definitely their only senior that starts.
Yeah, and their best player probably is a true freshman. I mean, Moses Moody, which I remember last year, Arkansas fans have had a lot of the same issues that Missouri fans have over the years. Like, hey, we have all these good players, and they keep going other places to play college basketball. And Moses Moody actually was one of 4 Arkansas guys they signed. Kentucky was after him. He stayed 17 points a game, and he's kind of lived up to everything people thought he was a year ago.
He's really good. I watched him a bunch of times on the recruiting circuit because he played for Brad Beal Elite with a lot of the guys Mizzou was recruiting, and he's a very, very smooth offensive player. He can score from anywhere. He can knock down threes, score in the mid range. He's big enough to take advantage of a mismatch down low. So kind of a little similar build, maybe a little smaller than Kobe Brown, but just a really effective scorer.
So I look at this game, and I kind of asked Konzo this, and he basically kind of shot it down. But I look at this game, and I don't know how Missouri wins this game without getting to at least 75 points. I mean, Arkansas is going to get to 75 most days.
Yeah, for sure. And, maybe Arkansas gets to 75 because if their half-court offense isn't working, they have to run a lot, which helps Missouri because Missouri likes to use transition as well. That's probably best case. But, yeah, I think you have to find some way to – I just don't think you're going to win this game in the 60s. That's what I wrote in my pregame thing. Like, Arkansas, I don't think has, scored under about 70-something, 77 points all season. They've scored over 85 in the last 4 games. They're going to put some points on the board, and obviously that's been a little bit of an issue for Missouri.
Yeah, they had one game at 69 and one at like 72, but they're averaging 90. And I was surprised when I looked at the numbers. Yeah, they're averaging 90. They're actually giving up fewer points per game than Missouri does. So yeah. Missouri fans, and I understand why, they're looking at this going, well, they haven't played anybody. I don't know anything about them. Maybe not, but they're beating nobody by 24 points a game, and Auburn isn't nobody. They won at Auburn by 12 points on Wednesday.
Right. No, that I definitely understood coming into that game, saying like, well, we'll see how good Arkansas really is. But that was definitely a little bit of a statement in my mind, beating Auburn on the road. Now, I know Auburn is, not quite what they have been the past few years, doesn't have Sharif Cooper, but still, that's a road win against another team that can score and a decent SEC team. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I do think that this is still Arkansas's best test. But I think it's also, at this point, you can't just say they've beat nobody.
Okay, so look, I know we're talking Missouri-Arkansas basketball, but like somebody just commented, and I saw a Chip Brown tweet, Tom Herman out, Steve Sarkisian expected to be the next head coach at Texas.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Did not see that coming.
No, I mean, Texas just beat Colorado. Like, Texas was back again, man.
Yeah.
For the 27th time.
I don't know. I don't know.
You can't just keep firing every guy that doesn't play in the national title game.
Exactly. And I mean, what have we really seen from Steve Sarkisian as a head coach that suggests he might be that much of an upgrade from Tom Herman? I don't know.
Right.
I mean, maybe I'm misremembering or something, but he was fine at Washington, but they were not upset when he left. And then he was meh at USC, and I had those issues, and like I know he's gotten those cleared up and good for him, but like what has he shown other than he worked for Nick Saban that suggests you fire Tom Herman to hire him?
And to work at Texas, you've got to have the Mac Brown shake the hands, kiss the babies, love the boosters. Maybe Steve Sarkisian does, but he doesn't really strike me that way.
I mean, I don't know enough about him to say that.
Well, he hadn't been allowed to speak to anybody for 2 years because he worked for Nick Saban.
Yes.
So
I don't know. That surprises me for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, just a quick little Saturday morning diversion there. I mean, I'm glad that at least if we're working, it's not on. Oh, hey, just kind of out of the blue, or the school we cover fired the football coach, and now we've got a real full day. So, so look, we can break down Missouri's problems like 8 million different ways, but basically their problem is they can't shoot. And I don't know if that's a 2-game problem or if it's an actual like longer than that problem, because the last 2 games they haven't made shots from anywhere. In the past, it seemed like they actually could shoot from some places, just not further than like 12 feet from the basket. But the last 2 games, they haven't been able to shoot from anywhere.
Right. Yeah. I think the 3-point shooting is more than a 2-game problem.
Yeah.
I mean, last year they were like 330th in 3-point shooting, and this year they really haven't had a very good, a game where they put it together outside of Mark Smith. I mean, if no one shot well other than him, and then there's games when he doesn't shoot well, so they don't make any threes, and that makes them pretty easy to guard.
Yeah.
Frankly, and Arkansas is good at guarding within the 3-point line. They've got that 7-3 guy, Connor Vanover, who kind of anchors the paint, and I think they're in top 50 in 2-point defense. So that's going to be an issue. Missouri's going to have to find a way to knock down some shots to just open things up a little bit and make the layups and the shorter shots more easy to make, because the last 2 games it's been very clear what defenses are trying to do, and Missouri just hasn't had anyone beat that by shooting over it.
Yeah, so we were talking earlier, by the way, Chris Del Conte, the AD at Texas, has put out a statement, so Chip Brown was not incorrect. Anyway, we were talking earlier, yeah, they need to make more 3-point shots, but, like, who makes them? I mean, because people would say Xavier Pinson, dude, he's 8 of 33. Like, he's a bad 3-point shooter. Drew Smith was a pretty good 3-point shooter at Evansville, but he really hasn't been a good one here in a year and a half. And Mark Smith, at this point, I think it's fair to say, against better, more athletic teams, isn't really capable of getting that shot off.
Yeah.
So where's it come from?
It's probably has to come from Mark Smith. Like you have to try to draw something up to get him a look, I think. And part of that is on him for sure. It's at a certain point you gotta, if you're getting face guarded like that, you've got to find a way to beat it with a back cut or something like that. Do something to at least make the defense think or adjust. And the coaching staff, Conso said, that's on us as well to get him more involved. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it starts with Mark Smith, and then if you can get each of Drew Smith and Xavier Pinson and Javon Pickett and maybe Mitchell Smith, although I'm not a big fan of the forward shooting ever again at this point, just to each make one, like that could go a long way. Like, especially Drew Smith is a competent 3-point shooter, and it's hard. He brings the ball up the floor a lot, and I don't think he's very as effective shooting off the dribble, mainly because his shot is so low. But if you can, get someone like Pinson going to the rim and find Drew Smith off the kick out, he's a very competent shooter. You would expect him to shoot better than he has this season. So, I mean, I think that is another viable option. Yeah,
Breakfast King of Loyola wants to know how Jordan Wilmore's outside shot is. Maybe that's a solution. Maybe you just toss him out there.
I'm not sure he's allowed. I think the coaches have put a rule in, or at least they should. Like, you're not allowed to shoot from more than about 2 feet yet.
But that leads to something that I'm kind of serious about. And I know Conzo's approach is, if you're open, let it fly. Like, he is very open about, hey, we tell our guys, if you have a shot, shoot it. Mm-hmm. But, like, Kobe Brown and Mitchell Smith can't keep doing that. I mean, Kobe Brown is not a jump shooter. And although Mitchell Smith, like, I think he draws most of the ire. He's actually only taken 10 of them. He's made 3, which makes him on this team an above-average 3-point shooter. I have a much bigger problem with Kobe Brown.
Yeah, I've had problems with Mitchell Smith shooting too many threes in the past, but this season I think he's actually been about right. I mean, he's taken wide open ones, and he's at least made a couple. Kobe Brown, though, is capable of putting the ball on the floor and going to the rim. In fact, he's far more effective when he does that than when he shoots it. So yeah, just do that. I mean, at a minimum, drive and look to kick. I think when you get to a certain point where you have to ask yourself, why am I getting the ball in the corner with no one within 10 feet of me? It's because I can't make the shot. So yeah, I do think, especially with Brown, he has the skill set to go and, drive and give himself a mid-range shot or create for other people. And you'd like to see him do that a little more.
Yeah. So Cameron asks, and Mitch, I will just ask you if you want to handle this or you want me to handle the latest Ed Chang inquiry.
I mean, you go ahead.
Go ahead. So here's the situation with Ed Chang. I mean, Conzo said last week he's not ready. The day Ed Chang committed, we were kind of blown away. We said, I don't know. I'm kind of shocked that this happened. We didn't think they would take him. He averaged, I don't know, wasn't it something like 3.2 points a game at a Wyoming junior college? It was 1.5 points a game at San Diego State. I mean, there was never a world in which Ed Chang was really going to help this team this year. I guess the hope is that by next year he can. But this is 4 years in a row. It started with KJ Santos. It continued with Christian Guess. It then went to Axel Okongo, who I'm sorry to besmirch his name because I know he was one of Mitchell's favorite players. And now we have Ed Chang and, frankly, maybe also Jordan Wilmore as guys that were added late in a recruiting cycle that we didn't understand why it happened when it happened, despite Konzo telling us we're not going to take a guy just to fill a spot. I mean, Ed Chang, it's pretty obvious this year he's not going to play. And if he does, it's not going to be in any sort of time that matters. So, and Cam's asking, is he bad enough defensively that he's just unplayable, or was his shooting oversold? I think I think we see this in recruiting, right? Every time a kid commits, you want to think the best. So if he's a 5-star, you say, oh my God, we got the greatest guy ever. If he's a 4-star, you say, that's the kind of guy we need to get. If he's a 2 or a 3-star, you convince yourself he's underrated and that Missouri has found this gem. Sometimes they're just rated and it's right. And I talked to enough people the day it happened that didn't understand what was happening with the Ed Chang commitment. And look, if he goes on to have an all-SEC career and he scores 27 points a game, good for him, and he can tell me to shut the hell up. And I hope that happens for his sake. And for your sake, I would just be rather surprised if it did happen, to be honest.
Here's a couple of quick things on this. First of all, Axel Okongo was amazing because people may not understand my love for him, but you had to watch him in warm-ups. His warm-up shooting was just amazing. His free throw form, the ball, he shot it at a downward angle. It was beautiful. Second,
very line drive-ish.
Lump Wilmore in with Chang exactly because I think as you take a high school kid who has the things you can't teach, the size and the strength and that, and you work on him for a few years, and that's a fine thing to do, even if this is kind of year you're building toward, clearly the goal is for him to develop over the course of a couple of years and replace Jeremiah Tillman. With Ed Chang, we were talking all off season, Missouri needs to find someone, with experience who can help this year, just someone who can bring some shooting, some scoring. And, you go and get a guy from, a junior college who scored 4 points a game, and it just didn't make sense, really. Mm-hmm. And I think a big part of it was that he wasn't. I mean, it's pretty clear he wasn't the top option. They missed on some other guys. Justin Turner went back to Bowling Green, and David DeJulius went to Cincinnati, et cetera. The other thing that kind of boggles our minds, I know, is why everyone is kind of so obsessed with him. Like, why do we get so many questions about it? And part of it, I think, is that right now, we were told he could shoot and no one else is making shots. Yeah. But I don't know. I guess, like you said, our thing is just neither of us ever expected him to contribute a whole lot. And so I guess it doesn't surprise me, especially because it's not like Mizzou's only playing 6 guys. They're still going 8-9 deep.
They're getting out of this recruiting class almost exactly what I expected them to, although they're getting a little less out of Drew Buggs than I think. So we'll wrap it up with you, Mitch, with this. CBW0 says, Tennessee made us look very unathletic. I didn't think we were that poor in terms of on-floor athleticism. Will Arkansas be able to do the same? And I think that's fair. Outside of Xavier Pinson, who do you see on this basketball team that you say he's a really good athlete?
Yeah, no, that's been a concern for, a couple of years now. And we talked about it a lot last season. And it's part of the issue with, the offense. Everyone wants to talk about, scheme. And yes, I thought the team stood around a little too much against Tennessee. But I thought the bigger problem was, once guys got inside, Tennessee was able to just swallow them up with their length and athleticism. Mm-hmm. And that's not a new problem. So, yeah, and Tennessee is, exceptional in length, athleticism, defense. I mean,
but also it's not a program that you should look at and say, well, we just have to give up against them. I mean, if Tennessee can do that, if you're Missouri, you have to be thinking, well, that's the goal. That's what we want to be.
Sure. This year's Tennessee team is probably the best defense Missouri's going to play. But, yes, I mean, it's not a new issue that we've seen teams be able to kind of out-athlete Missouri. And that's led, I think, to the offensive issues more than, that and the shooting inability, a lot more than, scheme, in-game adjustments, anything like that. It's just, at a certain point, you got to make shots. You got to get to the basket and beat your defender one-on-one. And Missouri doesn't have a ton of guys who can do those two things.
Right. And the coaching things I will point to are these. He coaches them to make shots. He does not tell them to miss shots. But also, again, it goes back to at some point you have to tell some guys they're not allowed to shoot. And the second thing is, and I've had people who know far more about basketball than I do say to me, I don't really know what the plan is in the half court. So if they can't score in transition, I don't really know what the idea that they're going for is in the half. And that's not my words because, again, this is people that know more than I do. But when I've heard it from enough people, I think it's at least a fair criticism.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree.
All right, so tip off in 4 minutes, Mitch. We'll let you run, man. I'm gonna wrap things up, and we'll see how it goes and meet on Zoom to talk to Conzo Martin in a little while.
Sounds good. Enjoy the game.
All right, so Mitchell Forty will have your coverage on Power Mizzou on the message boards all day long. He will have written post-game coverage for you. I will be back here with you guys at let me think. It is an 11 o'clock tip-off, so I'm going to be back here with you guys at, I'm guessing, 1:30-ish. After the game, Conzo will do a Zoom call. I'll jump on that. I'll record it. After that downloads to my computer, I will jump on and start the Burger Smokehouse dance class, and we will start that by playing Conzo's post-game press conference for you guys. We will take your calls. We will take your comments. Whatever happens, we'll talk all about it. We'll either be talking about 7-1 Missouri and everybody feels a little bit better, or 6-2 Missouri and, oh my God, the sky has completely dropped on everyone's head. So appreciate you guys being here. Hope you're all able to join us in a couple hours for the post-game show. Before you leave, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share this show on whether it's on social media, whether you've got some friends that are Missouri fans, shoot a text to them and say, hey, man, here's a thing that we're doing this year. You guys might enjoy it. We obviously want everybody to subscribe to our site, but these shows are on YouTube. Anybody can watch them. You don't have to subscribe to Power Mizzou to do so. We hope it convinces you to subscribe, but if you just want to check this out, hey, share this with anybody the more people, the better the show is. So tip-off in Fayetteville, I mean, the broadcast starts in about 90 seconds. I'm not sure tip-off will be quite that soon, but certainly coming up shortly. So I'm going to go watch the game. I'll be back here with you guys, like I said, in the range of 1:30. So signing off. Mizzou and Arkansas coming up. Thanks for watching.